May 4th, 2009. It's upfront season in New York City. Over the next few weeks, we'll get our first look at the television broadcast network's fall primetime lineups, as they try to sell some of their precious advertising space. At the national broadcasting company known to most as NBC, the suits are attempting to be subversive. Instead of an upfront, they're holding an in-front, which is pretty much an upfront, except it's a few weeks before the other networks. At 9 a.m., out comes a much-anticipated press release, the fall pickups. Among all of the buzzwords in corporate speak, broad and diverse, quality brand, emotional human stories, there are the pilots that have been ordered to series. It's a momentous occasion. Their cast and crews will get to see their hard work pay off in the form of a season of broadcast television, where millions of eyes will be watching. These are the Lucky Six. Parenthood, a drama about 4 adult siblings who struggle through, parenthood. Trauma, a medical drama about first responder paramedics. Mercy, another medical drama about the nurses at a hospital. Day 1, a post-apocalyptic survival story. 100 Questions, a multi-camera comedy about a woman looking for love. And finally, a quaint little sitcom with, and this is a direct quote, high school losers, newly divorced housewives, and old people who want to keep their minds active. Its name is Community. This is the story of Community. I'm Alex Wong. June 25th, 2009. Thursday night on NBC is hallowed ground. From Cheers to Frasier to Seinfeld to Friends, legendary comedies have made their names in this primetime slot. In fact, for 13 years in the 1990s and early 2000s, NBC somewhat self-servingly titled it Must-See TV. While in the last couple of years the block has really lost its luster, so much so that the Must-See TV label has been dropped in favor of Comedy Night Done Right. Today, with the official announcement of fall premiere dates, Community is becoming a part of history. It will air on Thursdays, alongside The Office, 30 Rock, and Parks and Recreation. During the in-front, NBC called Community a smart comedy, and in that respect, it fits right in with its new neighbors. The Office, based on a British series of the same name, first aired in 2005 and brought qualities of normalcy and subtlety that were foreign to American television audiences, particularly American broadcast television audiences. From a bland office in Scranton, Pennsylvania, it fought against dire odds and blazed its own trail, as much as a remake of another show could blaze its own trail, transforming from an unknown, undesirable underdog to the crown jewel of the Thursday block, now heading into its 6th season. Last year, it pulled an average of 9 million viewers per episode, got its 3rd consecutive Emmy nomination for Outstanding Comedy Series, and is showing no signs of slowing down. The premise behind 30 Rock, now preparing for its 4th season, seems inherently contradictory. A satirical look inside the big business of GE, NBC, and a thinly veiled Saturday Night Live, it's a breathing advertisement for its network that also isn't afraid to take some lighthearted shots at the higher-ups. More than anything else, though, it's known for its jokes. Lots and lots of jokes. Its pace is not blink and you'll miss a joke, it's blink and you'll miss 3 jokes. Calling it just smart would almost be a disservice to its intelligence. It's a surreal, every scene is a comedy sketch experience, and it's become an integral part of NBC's Thursday nights. It's not a viewership juggernaut, not even close, but critics absolutely adore it. It's won back-to-back Emmys for Outstanding Comedy Series, and could be well on its way to a 3rd. Parks and Recreation is the new kid on the block, having just wrapped up its 1st season in May, but even if you didn't already know it was conceived as a spin-off, a mere perusal of its specifications would quickly reveal it's an attempt to recapture the magic of The Office. this time in the fictional town of Pawnee, Indiana. I mean, mockumentary? Talking heads? Local government? Yeah, this has smart comedy written all over it. The reviews of the short first season are not spectacular. It looks a little bit too much like The Office. But 6 episodes is a minuscule sample size, and with a second season in the works, Parks and Rec has plenty of time to emerge from the shadow of its predecessor, much like its predecessor had to do. So, come the fall, Community will have some work to do and some real expectations to live up to. Perhaps it can look nearby for help. The common lesson from these 3 comedies is that to make a good show, you need good people. The Office is headed up by Greg Daniels, who wrote for SNL and The Simpsons and co-created the critically acclaimed King of the Hill, and its cast is led by Steve Carell, who has become a veritable movie star. 30 Rock was conceived by Tina Fey, a former head writer and performer on SNL who also wrote the cult comedy Mean Girls, and stars, among others, herself and Alec Baldwin, a classic leading man. Parks and Recreation was created by Greg Daniels and Michael Schur, another writer on The Office, with Amy Poehler, another SNL alum, playing the lead. Unsurprisingly, funny people produce funny comedy. So who does Community have running the show? Find out after the break. It's late June 2009, and Community is slated to premiere in the fall, alongside The Office, 30 Rock, and Parks and Recreation on Thursday nights on NBC. It'll have to make a name for itself amid comedy heavyweights, but make no mistake, the gang behind Community has plenty of talent to go around. First is the single individual most likely to determine Community's success, creator and executive producer Dan Harmon. After starting his career doing improv and sketch comedy, Harmon came out to Los Angeles in the late 1990s. But while the Wisconsinite grew up on classic NBC television, he had his formative experiences in the City of Angels with some rather eccentric projects. First was Heat, Vision, and Jack, a failed Fox pilot starring Jack Black and Owen Wilson. Its main characters were a former astronaut and a talking motorcycle, and it somehow managed to develop a cult following despite never making it on the air. Next was Channel 101, a short internet-based film festival he founded along with his friend and fellow improviser Rob Schraub. It was offbeat and unique, a sort of spin-off of network television, where independent filmmakers could submit pilots that were only allowed to continue production if audiences let them. After those early endeavors, Harmon would continue to find work in more traditional television, co-writing the animated film Monster House and co-creating Comedy Central's The Sarah Silverman program. But now in his early 30s, he couldn't help but shake the feeling that his life was incomplete, that he was missing that key experience that could boost both his career and his disposition. So he went back to school. And that would have been a nice story, wouldn't it? In reality, Harmon did enroll at Glendale Community College, but it was to serve an even baser purpose, to save his relationship. After all, nothing bonds people together like struggling through the Spanish language. Now, Harmon and his girlfriend did not end up spending the rest of their lives with each other, but his semester and a half was not for naught. During his stay, he joined a study group with a bunch of knuckleheads. His words, not mine. And he had a fascinating realization. At least for his narcissistic self, again, his words. You can find human connection in the weirdest places with the weirdest people. Okay, those words are mine. Either way, he scribbled the idea down, and when NBC called a few years later, well, you can fill in the rest. And Harmon's not the only executive producer with some serious comedy cred. Joe and Anthony Russo may not be household names, at least not yet. But they played an enormous role in producing and directing one of the smartest smart comedies of all time, the low-rated, critically adored cult classic, Arrested Development. The show's rapid pace kept you on your toes and rewarded you for paying attention, and little details could fly by on the first viewing, or the second, or the third. It was canceled after only 3 seasons, but its rabid fan base hasn't stopped loving the show, or clamoring for a movie. So Community had its leaders, and the next task was casting a lead to play Jeff Winger, a disgraced former lawyer looking to earn a legitimate bachelor's degree. Enter Joel McHale. The Seattle area native started out as a member of a local sketch comedy show called Almost Live, which, by the way, was the origin of one Bill Nye the Science Guy. After getting his master's degree in acting, he came out to LA, where he lived the actor's life, getting little parts in CSI Miami, Will and Grace, and Spider-Man 2. Curiously, though, his big break came from a much smaller operation, standing in front of a green screen every week on cable. In 2004, McHale began hosting The Soup on the entertainment and pop culture channel E, a gig he will continue while filming Community. It's a weekly satirical take on the current goings-on, particularly in reality television. In fact, McHale often goes after shows and personalities on the network that writes his checks. A kind of celebrity-driven The Daily Show, it's a perfect fit for McHale, who mixes natural charisma with a distinctive snark and cynicism so well that it's hard to imagine him doing anything else. After filming some failed pilots, including the US version of the British sitcom The IT Crowd, he'll finally have a chance to lead a major network television sitcom on Community. Now, getting McHale is huge, but in an ensemble comedy, the supporting cast often means the difference between a 1-season show and a 10-season show. So while they may not be first on the call sheet, the remaining casting decisions will be crucial to Community's success. As a teetotaler, Gillian Jacobs seems like an odd choice to take on the role of Britta Perry, an activist and high school dropout who's probably had her fair share of alcohol. But like her character, Jacobs took a circuitous route to get here. It started out promisingly. She took her first acting class when she was 8, was in her first play in the 3rd grade, and was admitted to the famed Juilliard School in New York City. But at the prestigious conservatory, the model student struggled to meet the demands of unsympathetic teachers and brutally high expectations. Before the winter break of her 2nd year, Jacobs learned that she had been put on probation, which meant that, get this, she could be expelled from acting school for being bad at acting. Nevertheless, the indefatigable 19-year-old put her head down and survived, making it through her last 2 years uneventfully. Since graduating, she's had modest success. A New York Times review of her performance in the off-Broadway play Cage Love called her a star in the making, and she's already made her network television debut, albeit on small recurring parts. However, Community represents a new genre frontier for Jacobs, and she'll look to take the comedy world by storm. Danny Pudi shares a half-Polish ancestry with the character he will bring to life. But unlike Abed Nadir, who's an introverted pop culture nerd, Pudi has known for a while that he had a knack for the funny stuff. After growing up in Chicago, a renowned comedy town, and spending much of his childhood on stage, he attended Marquette University in nearby Milwaukee. It was there that the director of his theater program nominated him for the inaugural Chris Farley Scholarship, named after the late comedian and Marquette alum. It required what Pudi had, in spades: creativity and a good sense of humor. He won the award, and not only did he benefit from the money, which helped him subsidize his education, but also from the invitation to perform at Comics Come Home, an event run by the Farley Foundation. He got to strut his stuff alongside established improvisers in front of 1,500 people, including Dave Chappelle, and from that point on, he knew he wanted to do comedy for a living. Like many aspiring improvisers, Pudi then trained at the Second City back in Chicago before heading out west, getting small parts here and there. The most notable of those parts, strangely enough, was a T-Mobile ad as a sarcastic, butt-dialing husband. Like many aspiring actors, he got cast in many a failed pilot, including an improvised show named Giants of Radio where he met one Joel McHale. But now, Community has made it onto the air, and the time has come for Pudi to put his skills on display. As a new divorcee starting the next chapter of her life, Shirley Bennett is a tough role to portray. But fortunately, acting isn't Yvette Nicole Brown's first rodeo in the entertainment industry. As a teenager, the talented Clevelander with a commanding voice actually signed with Motown Records. But after graduating from the University of Akron in 1994, she decided to move to Los Angeles to become an actress. You starting to sense a theme here? A decade later, in 2004, Brown had a fantastic year. She landed a recurring role as Helen on the Nickelodeon show Drake and Josh, which would put her on 15 episodes throughout 3 seasons. Though supposedly even more fortuitous was her casting as a series regular for a new primetime comedy on ABC called The Big House, which starred a young Kevin Hart in a riches to rags story. It was Brown's first chance to get major screen time on a major broadcast network. And it was canceled. After 6 episodes that aired over just 29 days. It was a sobering experience, but she continued to find work in small doses on film and TV. It's now 2009, and her hard work has paid off with another series regular role, this time on Community. Hopefully it lasts just a little bit longer. Next is Community's resident uptight overachiever, Annie Edison, who's played by Alison Brie, who's a bit of an acting overachiever herself. I mean, she was born in Hollywood, California. She started to act when she was 5 years old, and she refined her craft at the California Institute of the Arts, which in some ways is like a Juilliard on the West Coast. Plus, since jumping into the big pond after her 2005 graduation, Bree's already made a name for herself, but in the genre of drama. In 2007, she was cast in AMC's period drama Mad Men as Trudy Campbell, the wife of ad man Pete Campbell. So in her first recurring role as an actress, she's got to play a character in the 1960s. It's been 2 years since she got the role, and the show is continuing to blossom, with Bree being one of the boats lifted by the rising tide. Now, she's starting to take her talents to the comedy side, from My Alibi, a Breakfast Club-inspired 18-episode web series, to Community, her network debut on NBC. Former high school quarterback Troy Barnes has more of an affinity for football than schoolwork, but there's nothing Donald Glover can't do. At 26 years old, he's already a multi-hyphenate. The actor-writer-musician has plenty to his name. First, writing. It's his degree from NYU, and it's how he made a name for himself in the entertainment industry right out of college, on the Emmy-winning writing staff of Community's neighbor, 30 Rock. There are a few better ways to prepare yourself in the mannerisms of network TV than spending 3 years under the tutelage of Tina Fey. Next, music. Glover began dabbling in hip-hop at NYU, recording a self-produced mixtape called The Younger I Get. By the time he had released his next mixtape, 2008's Sick Boy, he had adopted the moniker Childish Gambino, the product of a Wu-Tang Clan name generator, which, by the way, is still up and running. Unfortunately, this potential probably won't be tapped often on Community, but hey, you never know. Finally, acting. In college, Glover wasted no time building his resume. He co-founded Derek Comedy, a sketch comedy group that's accumulated millions of views on YouTube. He learned to improvise at the famous Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, and he's made multiple appearances on NBC's Late Night with Conan O'Brien. Later on, his writing job had its perks too. He's already made multiple small cameos on 30 Rock, and he's about to star in his first series. He's 26. So out of the cast's young guns, there's much talent to be found. But by far the biggest name in this motley showbiz crew is Chevy Chase, who will play Pierce Hawthorne, a multiple-time divorcee with a lot of money and not a lot of tact. From working on the humor magazine National Lampoon, to writing and performing during the opening days of SNL and Weekend Update, to acting in hit films like Caddyshack, Fletch, and the National Lampoon's Vacation movies, Chase is a comedy legend. The former funniest man in America has entertained generations of comedy fans, and burned plenty of bridges along the way. But in his illustrious decades-long career, he's never been a regular on a primetime television series. So what drew the 65-year-old semi-retired former leading man to a supporting role on this bottom-of-the-press-release pilot on NBC? Dan Harmon's writing, Chase says in an interview. And the feeling is mutual. Harmon grew up around the time when Chase was the most popular figure on TV. Obviously, the actor is a huge get for Community. As a result, he's been one of the names the network is marketing the show around, and his presence will undoubtedly draw plenty of eyeballs in the opening weeks, as the show tries to gain a foothold in the cultural conversation. Finally, the last series regular role left to cast is the gang's Spanish teacher, Senor Chang, and on July 14th, the final piece falls into place. Dr. Ken Jeong. As his title suggests, comedy actually wasn't the North Carolina native's first career. He has a medical degree from UNC and completed his residency in New Orleans. He only decided to move to Los Angeles after winning the 1995 Big Easy Laugh-Off, a contest run by, among others, the former president of NBC, Brandon Tartikoff. From there, it wasn't a straight line to stardom. John continued to practice medicine while working on his stand-up and booking minor acting jobs. But in the last couple of years, he's been a part of some big-time productions. First, Judd Apatow's 2007 comedy Knocked Up, which grossed over $200 million and established Jeong as a bona fide comedic actor. Then, parts in Role Models, Pineapple Express, Step Brothers, and All About Steve. And just 2 months ago, a film that could define him for years to come, The Hangover, where he plays the rambunctious gangster Mr. Leslie Chow and, at one point, emerges from a car trunk completely nude. On his new show, Jeong's role will be somewhat toned down, but he'll look to bring a taste of his R-rated fearlessness to a new audience. In total, the cast of Community has a vast range of talents, trajectories, and experiences, not unlike misfits at an actual community college. But they share in common a love of comedy and pride in their show, and soon, it's going to be time to send the little community they've created out into the world. August 10th, 2009. There are no two ways about it. NBC is in trouble. Once the biggest, brightest, and most important network on TV, it's fallen all the way down to last place among the big four over-the-air stations. Out of the 31 most watched programs during the previous season, NBC had 3. For reference, Fox had 5, ABC had 8, and CBS had an astounding 15. In the comedy department, the network may give a platform to the smart and cutting edge, but guess what? Except for The Office, people aren't watching, and to advertisers, and by extension executives, that's what matters most. Given its premise, Community is in real danger of falling into the same unprofitable habits as the rest of NBC's lineup, and the network doesn't want to blow it. So 5 weeks before the scheduled airing of Community's pilot, they've made an intriguing marketing decision. To leak it. Well, not precisely. Starting today, anyone in the United States can watch the first episode of the new fall series commercial-free, but they must first become a fan of the Community Facebook page. In an era where social media is booming, it's an inexpensive way to get the word out about the show and hit some vital demographics. Of course, it will only work if the pilot is good. 10 days later, the network tries another move to connect with a younger audience: internet-exclusive webisodes, made popular, at least in comedy, by The Office, whose webisode series The Accountant scored them a Daytime Emmy. The series, entitled The 5 A's, stars creator Dan Harmon as Dr. Pat Isaacson, Dean of Admissions and Professor of Women's Studies. Isaacson takes you through the Greendale Community College campus, showing off such sparkling amenities as a wheelchair ramp and air conditioning. Lastly, 2 weeks before the series premiere, NBC makes one more attempt to reach out directly to potential fans. A screening of the pilot and a live Q&A with the cast at Los Angeles City College, the real-life site of Community's exterior shots. The event is in front of a bit of the press, but it's primarily for Facebook friends, Twitter users, and local radio listeners. Once again, NBC's marketing strategy is very clear: direct engagement. And it appears to be working. There's a buzz around Community, especially critically. In an advanced review, Jonah Krakauer at the video game and entertainment website IGN calls it very impressive, and longtime television reviewer Alan Sepinwall deems it his favorite new show of the season. Both have taken a liking to the cast, particularly Joel McHale, and are genuinely excited to see the show's progression. In addition to the positive reviews, Community should get a boost from its time slot. For the first few weeks of fall, NBC is airing a Thursday edition of its popular Weekend Update segment of SNL. Therefore, Community will spend some time at 9:30 p.m., directly following the bright spot for the network, viewership-wise at least, The Office. After 30 Rock comes back on October 15th, the show will move to its permanent home at 8 p.m., and hopefully its viewers will come along with it. The date is September 16th. The initial press tour is done, the web content is released, and the early reviews are in. For Dan Harmon and the cast and crew of Community, it's an exciting time. They love the show they've made, and early signs say they're probably not alone. However, like most new shows, their initial series order is only 13 episodes long, so before they can even think about a second season, they've got to earn 9 more episodes to stay around for the spring. In other words, they've got 2 or 3 months to prove that they belong on network TV. But as the day of the premiere arrives, all they can do is join the rest of America, or rather a hopefully large subset of America, sit back and watch. October 8th, 2009. 3 weeks have passed since Community's debut, and with 30 Rock's return 7 days from today, this is a crucial moment for the young sitcom. But from the looks of things, so far, so good. As expected, critics seem to be warming up to the show. David Bushman, a television curator at the Paley Center for Media, calls it his favorite new show of the season. In his review of the 3rd episode, Introduction to Film, Jonah Krakauer writes that he's really excited for the rest of the season. Some are even more enthusiastic. Emily Vanderwerf, the new TV editor of the AV Club, a popular entertainment news and criticism website, gushes in her review, quote, "It's taken all of 3 weeks, but even after this episode, probably the weakest the show has done yet, I'm starting to really fall for Community and fall hard." End quote. And it's not just the professional critics who appreciate what they've seen so far. In the reliably active and always opinionated comment section of the AV Club, the evaluations are overwhelmingly positive, with new fans already quoting lines and spotting references left and right. Just 8 days after the series premiere, fans create the Community Wiki, which is exactly what it sounds like. Wikipedia, but for Community, filled with character information, episode descriptions, and obscure trivia. It's early, but it seems that comedy-wise, Community is living up to the hype. But of course, there's the dark cloud looming over almost every show on network television. How many people are watching? The well-publicized pilot did fairly well, retaining 93% of The Office's audience for a total of 7.89 million viewers. However, it would not have the same luck the following weeks, keeping only 72 and 79%, averaging about 5.6 million viewers per episode. That's more or less to be expected for a new show, but the decline is still concerning. Nevertheless, Community is definitely finding an audience, and for a quick-witted, intelligent comedy, that's what you hope for. October 23rd, 2009. 6 episodes of Community have aired, and the response is more of the same. Reviews are generally good while the show figures itself out comedically and thematically, while ratings are mediocre for a primetime network comedy. It's not the end of the world for the show or its network. The Office, for instance, sat on the brink of cancellation for a season and a half before it found its groove and became NBC's most popular comedy. There's no question that the Peacock sees some of that same promise in Community. And beyond the freshman sitcom, breakout fall shows are few and far between. So rather uneventfully, NBC makes the announcement. Community has been picked up for a full season. Of course, its job is far from over. Now the pressure moves to May, when Community will have to prove it deserves to return to the airwaves next fall. And it will have to do it without the valuable lead-in of The Office. And it will have to do it on a network that is struggling to maintain its foothold in American living rooms. And yet, despite all of that, Community has a promising future. It's built on a solid foundation, from the producers to the writers to the cast. It's made it past the first wave of expectations and already grown an influential fan base. If it plays its cards right, and gets a little bit of luck, Community could be on the air for a long, long time. Thank you for listening to The Story of Community. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're binging along, listen to the next episode after watching Season 1 of the show. To watch the podcast after show, the epilogue, featuring myself and other Community podcasters, along with the articles, interviews, and other sources referenced in this episode and a complete transcript, visit bit.ly/thestoryofcommunity. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at StoryofCommPod, on Instagram at TheStoryOfCommunity, and on the Community Podcast Discord at bit.ly/podcastcentral. The Story of Community is written, produced, and edited by me, Alex Wong. Music is composed by Alex Wong and played on MuseScore using the Chateau Grand sound font by John Neubauer. I'd like to give a shout out to the Community Podcast Network for their assistance throughout this project. You can find links to all of the other fantastic Community podcasts on the same website, bit.ly/thestoryofcommunity. Also special thanks to Deborah Wong, Evan Angler, and Chris Revel at Let's Chat Media for their feedback and advice. On the research side, thank you to the Wayback Machine at archive.org and the Reddit search tool at camas.github.io/reddit-search for saving me countless hours of fruitless digging. This podcast is produced using Adobe Audition and distributed through Spreaker. See you next episode.